With the Capital One Savor Card, you earn 4% cash back on dining and entertainment.
Does that include dinner at that new French place?
Yep, 4% cash back there.
How about bowling with my friends?
Yeah, 4% cash back on that too.
Nice.
And that'll be a rewarding weekend. Because with the Capital One Savor Card, you earn 4% on dining and entertainment. So when you go out, you cash in. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Capital One Bank, USA, N.A.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Screenplay Podcast, episode number 22.
Do or do not. There is no try. Yoda.
Broadcasting from a dark, windowless room in Hollywood when we really should be working on that next draft. It's the Bulletproof Screenplay Podcast, showing you the craft and business of screenwriting while teaching you how to make your screenplay bulletproof. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to a crossover edition of the Bulletproof Screenplay Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by Bulletproof Script Coverage. Now, unlike other script coverage services, Bulletproof Script Coverage actually focuses on the kind of project you are and the goals of the project you are. So we actually break it down by 3 categories: micro budget, indie film market, and studio film. There's no reason to get coverage from a reader that's used to reading tentpole movies when your movie's going to be done for $100,000. And we wanted to focus on that at Bulletproof Script Coverage. Our readers have worked with Marvel Studios, CAA, WME, NBC, HBO, Disney, Scott Free, Warner Brothers, The Blacklist, and many, many more. So if you need your screenplay or TV script covered by professional readers, head on over to covermyscreenplay.com. And the show is also sponsored by Masterclass. Now, I know a lot of you have probably heard of Masterclass, where they have amazing classes on screenwriting from Aaron Sorkin, Shonda Rhimes, Steve Martin on comedy, Judd Apatow on how to write comedy. But now they're offering a free 7-day trial. So you guys can take these courses for free. It's amazing. And if you are a screenwriter, definitely go sign up and take the classes for free. You got 7 days to watch as many classes as you want. So just head over to indiefilmhustle.com/free masterclass and take advantage while it lasts. Now, before we get into it today, guys, I'd like to apologize for being late this week. I am actually moving offices and headquarters for Indie Film Hustle, so it's been a little bit nuts. So in the middle of a major move, it's tough to get these podcasts out. So I'm back, and today we are doing a special crossover edition of the Indie Film Hustle podcast and the Bulletproof Screenplay podcast, because I felt that today's guest kind of crosses over a little bit into both worlds. So today's guest is Micahel Tucker from Lessons from the Screenplay. Now, Lessons from the Screenplay is a YouTube channel that analyzes movie scripts to examine exactly how and why they are so good at telling their stories. And Michael's been doing this for a little while now, and I have become a big fan of his channel. And I wanted to have him on the show because he has learned a tremendous amount about how a lot of some of the best stories out there are broken down and how they work and why they work. He's really beaten them up a lot. And I think there's a lot of value in what he does on his channel. And I wanted to have him on the show to kind of figure out what his story was, as well as see if we can get some knowledge bombs dropped on the storytelling process. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Micahel Tucker from Lessons from the Screenplay. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. Nice to see you, or hear you, I guess.
Thank you so much for being on the show, man. I am a huge fan of what you do over at Lessons from the Screenplay, man. It is very inspiring and extremely helpful to all of us screenwriters out there. So thank you for the work, the God's work that you're doing, sir.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. I'm glad people are enjoying it and finding it valuable.
Now, why did you want to become a screenwriter in the first place?
Well, I've pretty much always loved filmmaking. Like since I was a little kid, I remember watching Star Wars and just like having the thought of like, I want to do this. And so I've, since I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to get into filmmaking in some respect. Mm-hmm. And at first it was, I wanted to blow up X-Wings because that just looked like so much fun.
Obviously.
But as I got older, I sort of realized that the reason I was excited about those X-Wings blowing up is because of the story around it, and that like filmmaking is storytelling. And so that's when I sort of got more into wanting to be a director. And so a lot of my attention to writing came kind of through the lens of wanting to be a director. And so if you want to direct something, you have to have something to direct. And so that's kind of where all of my writing aspirations came from, is like, how do I create the best screenplay for me to then turn into a movie? Because that's the part that I love and I have a lot of fun with. So that was sort of the beginning of my journey into writing and filmmaking.
Now, what is the genesis of Lessons from a Screenplay? At what point did you say, you know what, I'm going to start a YouTube channel and I'm going to do this?
Yeah, so I have been in LA since 2010, and I came down and I did a bunch of short films and worked with friends on creative projects, and it was really great and learned a lot, but quickly realized that short films do not pay the bills. And so then I spent a lot of time doing like documentary editing or just shooting random, going on random shoots and stuff. And so at the beginning of 2016, I was working on a documentary project that was going to sort of pay for my life for the next year. And then it all of a sudden got cut short, and it was like literally within 24 hours and went from I'm employed for the year to it's all over, goodbye. And so I sort of found myself suddenly without any obligations and had been working enough to have saved up a bit, sort of for the first time since being in LA. And so I had this free time and I had this little bit of cushion. And so my thought process was like, okay, why don't I use this time to go back to focusing on creative stuff? And sort of where I'd left off in my creative journey was realizing that the writing side of my skill set was sort of the weakest link. Like I directed lots of shorts and a web series and stuff, and generally feedback was like, the directing's good, it feels like a movie, but the story is kind of weak. And so with this free time, I decided, okay, I'm going to just dive into screenwriting and relearn all the basics and kind of dive into those fundamentals that I probably rushed through too much when I was in film school. And so I started reading a bunch of screenplays. And then as I was reading them, I thought, well, maybe I can write a blog post for each screenplay that I write. And that will help me retain the information that I learn. And then also I can share it with people and maybe they'll find it valuable and it can become a thing. And so in the process of writing that first blog post, I was thinking like, well, actually, I think this could probably be a video. And, I'd followed Nerdwriter and Every Frame of Painting and had seen sort of video essays and was a big fan of the educational side of YouTube with like SciShow and Vsauce and CGP Grey and stuff. So as I was writing that blog post, I was like, okay, well, I think this could be a video. And I think I have the skill set that I think I could make this happen. So why don't I try that? And so that was kind of the inception of the original idea of the channel. Now,
when you started the channel, I'm assuming did it take off right away, or did it take a little time to kind of get its feet, get its feet underneath itself?
It actually took off right away, which I was pretty surprised about. I spent a lot of time preparing before releasing the first video. I think there's probably 2 or 3 months where it was just me brainstorming, like, what is the channel? What does the video look like? My first video, which is the Gone Girl video, don't underestimate the screenwriter. I think I did somewhere between like 5 and 7 versions of that video before arriving at the one that I uploaded, because I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing when it came time to launch the channel. And so part of that was figuring out what is my voice, what is the thing that I want to say about screenwriting, what is already out there, how can I add to the conversation and not just, copy somebody else. And then that all kind of culminated. I'd done the Gone Girl video and my Independence Day video, which is the second video before releasing. But yeah, on the first day that I released the Gone Girl video, I think it got 200,000 views.
How did that happen? That doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly lucky, I think. I mean, it was largely just due to Reddit. Like I posted it to Reddit and it happened to take off and get traction there.
Sure.
And so within the first day or two, probably it was at 200,000 views. And I think at the end of the first day, I had 8,000 subscribers. So in one day, going from 0 to 8,000, that was crazy. So
That's insane.
it was a really good sign because putting aside life for 3 months and saying like, maybe I'm going to become a YouTuber and that's going to be my career is kind of a risky thing. So it was definitely affirming when the first video, caught some attention. It was like, okay, cool. I think maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe this can be a thing.
So how long does it take you to do a typical episode nowadays?
The average I would say is about 3 weeks. And it's interesting because no two videos are the same and each one has different challenges. And over time, I've gotten faster, but then that also allows me to work on other projects and develop new ideas at the same time. So generally, my release schedule has been about one a month, with each one taking about 3 weeks to make, with like a week of research, a week of writing, and then a week of kind of post-production on it.
Now, you are an editor by trade as well, correct? Or you do that as well?
Yeah, most of my professional gigs have been in the editing realm.
That is why these videos look as slick as they do. I mean,
it certainly has helped.
Yeah, because I see some of these video essays, and you're like, "Ooh, that was an iMovie, wasn't it? Is that a star wipe?"
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that when I first had the idea, and I was trying to do the crazy test of this seems like it's crazy. Are there reasons why it isn't crazy to do this? And one of the things was I kind of realized I had a very nice, well-rounded skill set for it. I knew After Effects and motion graphics and editing and had, I know writing and I've made films. And so all that, it seemed like I had the things that I needed to make it happen. So it looked out that way.
Now, you've covered David Fincher's films more than any other director. Is that purposeful?
I don't know that it was conscious, but it's definitely because Fincher's my favorite director, and I think his films are some of my favorite films. Mm-hmm. I didn't sit down and say I'm gonna do Fincher films more than any other, but they get requested a lot, and they're some of my favorites, so it has worked out that way. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest mistakes screenwriters make that you've seen in your journey through Lessons of a Screenplay?
That's a good question. I mean, kind of because of the nature of the channel, I've pretty much only read really good screenplays.
Sure.
But
from your experience in general, what do you think some of the big mistakes that you've made personally when writing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think sort of like I was saying, I kind of came at screenwriting from a director standpoint, and when I make my videos, I'm often picturing as the audience me in film school, film school Michael, who was really into directing, and I think it's easy to get excited about the clever ideas, or this twist is going to be so cool, or Memento, where half of it's told backwards. I like stories like that. I don't like normal stories where it's just a normal character arc and blah blah blah. And so I think that's something that I found in myself and other people I saw when I was in film school, is getting excited about the clever high concept stuff and skipping past the very fundamental basics, what is a simple character arc? How do you design a normal conventional structured film? What can you learn from that then lets you play with those conventions later? But it's just kind of that old adage of learn the rules before you break them, so you know how to break them in intelligent ways. And I think that's something that I think a lot of aspiring filmmakers do, is try to rush past the basics that make people care about that clever twist that you have in mind for the end of the film.
I just want to eat the cake. I don't want to make it.
Right. Exactly.
I don't want to know all the nuances about how to actually put the ingredients together. What fun is that?
Right. Exactly.
Now, in general, do you struggle more with writing plot, character, structure, or all three, or a combination? Because I have my answers to that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's I think a lot of it is character. I mean, I definitely try to approach whatever I'm writing, keeping in mind that all of those aspects need to be connected. But I think I'm maybe just because I've spent so much time editing, I think I'm much better at taking pieces that are laid out on the table and putting them together in the proper way than I am generating new ideas from scratch. And so I think for me, a lot of it is, probably in the character realm of like, I know I can figure out the structure and like these beats need to happen and these character changes need to occur at this point, for the optimal, dramatic impact. But when it comes to figuring out the specifics of that character, that can be tricky for me because that's when it kind of gets into a realm of like, well, there are tons of things that could satisfy the needs of the story. So how do I decide the right one? And how do I make sure that like this choice also meshes with this other character choice? And so I feel like that can be a part where I spend a lot of time running around in my brain, frustrated, trying to figure out the best way.
Now, are there any tips on how you can evoke emotion in a story, in a screenplay?
I think one of my videos that I talked about was in Game of Thrones and sort of how they evoke emotion. And I think from a structural point of view, I think they're very good about making sure every scene has that sort of transition of values that Micahel talks about, where, the beginning of the scene, everybody's happy. At the end of the scene, everybody's sad, like making sure that there are significant, value changes happening on a scene level and on a sequence level and on, the greater story level. And I think that is definitely key. I think the films where I find myself kind of getting bored or not as engaged are the ones where it seems like things are going fine for too long and there aren't those big changes. And when I, read either like friends' scripts or sort of, people, aspiring writers' scripts, that is something that I see a lot too, is like scenes and sequences that are there just to get from point A to point B, but they don't have those turns. They're not really telling the story. They're just moving the plot forward. And so I think that's kind of one of the disciplines you have to internalize is, making sure a scene isn't there just to get the characters from A to B, but like, what is the lesson they're learning? How is each scene and sequence pushing them further on their character arc? And I think that's why writing is so hard, because you have to do so many things at once.
Exactly. It is. There is a lot of plates you're spinning, especially and you look at some of these complex films that have so many things going on, and some of these writers just do it so effortlessly, and you're just like, God damn it, and how the hell are they doing this? So I'm going to geek out a little bit with you, considering that The Avengers was just recently released. Did you see it yet?
Yes, I did.
We won't talk about it. No spoilers. But why is Marvel getting it right and DC getting it so wrong? In your opinion, because I know you did a Marvel episode or an Avengers episode specifically. What is it about, in your opinion, that Marvel's done so wonderfully right? Whether you like them or not, for whatever reason, they are successful, where DC seems to be floundering so badly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really interesting doing my Avengers video, because I went and rewatched almost all of the Marvel films, and it was interesting seeing the progression that happened, like going back to the original Iron Man, which I loved when it came out. It's weird watching it now because it feels kind of outside the kind of model that Marvel has arrived at the same time. And I think probably a lot of it is that DC is trying to do a lot of catch up. I think like they were trying to jump too far ahead, especially, I mean, I haven't seen Justice League, but I feel like I've seen enough to know.
You don't need to watch it. It is the most atrocious thing you've ever watched. Right. It's so bad. I watched it just because I wanted to see the car crash. I wanted to see the car crash, and it was absolutely the car crash, and then some. It was sorry.
That's
There's and you know the funny thing is you can actually tell scenes that Joss Whedon wrote. Like I could go like, oh, that's Joss Whedon right there. Like, oh, there's that scene. It was like, that's way too fun and clever for it not to be Joss Whedon. And it was. And you could just tell the moments that Josh put in, because they are those Marvel moments. Not enough to save it by any stretch, because the structure was all off and the background of the characters and all that stuff. But you could tell the individual little scenes that they're just
little gems, but there's not enough for the movie. But you could tell.
Not enough to save it.
Not enough to save it, but you could so tell.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I think what's also interesting about DC is I think they were trying to kind of ride the wave of The Dark Knight, which was sort of this like
it's an anomaly.
Right. And I think what was great about it was that it was kind of a darker take on a superhero film, and it was very grounded in reality, and it was sort of like a post-terrorism commentary about like there was a lot of things happening in that was really good. But I feel like it was kind of the exception to the rule, and I feel like they tried to then kind of paint everything in that same color, and I think it just it doesn't seem like I don't know, like a tone and a style that superhero films want to live in, or at least
not Batman.
I don't know. I think Marvel has found right. But yeah, I feel like Marvel has found their tone and their voice really well. And, having seen Infinity War and sort of the more recent films, I am really amazed that each film, in some ways it can feel cookie cutter because you go in knowing what to expect and you get exactly what you want pretty much. But that's also really impressive. And I think they know their audience really well and have found their sort of formula that also lets different directors come in and play and do sort of their own take. Like, Thor had a lot of personality and Guardians and all that stuff. So yeah, I feel like, I think the focus seems to be on like the characters and the humor and making sure people are having fun with the characters. And I think that, especially in Infinity War, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but that was something that stood out to me as like they're making sure that we're having fun when we're watching these films. And I think not every film needs to be fun in the same way. But like I remember watching Batman versus Superman and just being like just wanting to tear my hair out and like why are you making me watch this? Yeah, like there's clever idea. Like even if the story and the elements are interesting, like having interesting stuff isn't enough. Like it has to be compelling and people have to be emotionally involved and all that.
I think there was so much.
Hasn't quite figured out how to do that.
I think that DC had so much fear. I believe it's fear of being left behind, which they already are. They got Marvel's got a 10-year jump on them. So rather than try to compete, just the roadmap's been laid out. They could have easily brought in Aquaman. What they did wonderful job with Wonder Woman. I thought that's one of the highlights. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they could have brought Aquaman in. They could have brought in the Flash and did the same thing they did with Avengers, and then at the end bring in Justice League, and then then slowly bring in Martian Manhunter, and because they have great characters, but they're just I don't know what the hell they're thinking. But we don't need a brooding Superman. Superman's not a brooding character,
right? Or like don't have that be like his defining quality. Like maybe that's the dark part of like one of the films is he like doubts things, but like he still has to. I think that was something that I really liked about Wonder Woman is I left feeling like I really knew what Wonder Woman stood for.
Yes.
Like intellectually and emotionally, I was like, oh, okay, she is a superhero that stands for this, and I get it, and I'm on board, and that's great. And I feel like I never got that from Batman or Superman or the other DC characters.
And then just jammed them all in there at the end. Anyway, we could go on for hours talking about DC and Marvel. But there was another video you did that I found riveting, which was the Rogue One versus Force Awakens. With the two leads and you're comparing the two. I know you're a Star Wars fan because there's a lightsaber on your icon, which is quite nice, by the way. I need you to do one of those for me. So I know you're a big fan of Star Wars, and I'm sure you've seen all of them. And now we're in the golden age, if you will, of Star Wars films, because now they're just coming in every year. Hopefully the quality will continue moving forward. Can you just talk to the audience a little bit about your take between Rogue One and Force Awakens and the two leads and how they differed so much, but yet they kind of didn't? It all depends on your point of view.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny. because after I release a video, my brain immediately like forgets everything that I talked about. So it's going to take me a minute to load it back up. But I remember watching The Force Awakens and just kind of like falling in love with the Rey character, because I feel like it was just a very well rendered character where you understood her background, you understood kind of what she wanted, and it was just, you know, fun to see her be put in these situations, at least for like the first half of the film. And I remember watching Rogue One and just feeling like bored the whole time, and like I didn't understand who Jyn was. And like you see the opening scene, you know, you see her backstory, and I feel like that was really good, but you don't really get to see who she is in the present. And that was sort of what that video was about, was like how to kind of define your protagonist and make them an active protagonist, and how important that is. And I think that was the main thing that was missing for me in Rogue One, was Jyn doesn't really make any choices. Like ostensibly she's the protagonist of the film, but she's pretty much along for the ride, or she's given choices that aren't really choices. It's like, do this or you die. And it's like,
I guess we're going to do
it. Yeah. And making choices, that's how you define the protagonist. That's how you learn what they care about. And I feel like she just wasn't given many opportunities to do that. And so I feel like that's why she was not a compelling protagonist for me. Even though I love the actress, I feel like the performance was great. It's just there wasn't a whole lot of character development there for her, or really any of the other characters, I thought.
But Force Awakens,
and I feel like
in Force Awakens, she was more of an active protagonist.
Yeah, I think, you know, especially for the first half of the film, you kind of see her day-to-day life, and you see her make choices like she's going to save BB-8 and she's not going to like sell him to the junk trader. And it's like, those are like little things, and maybe they're kind of obvious things, but they're at least that helps you understand who they are and gives you information, so that later when they're forced with more difficult choices, you kind of know where they're coming from. And so you understand why that's a difficult choice, and it's more compelling that way.
Now, do you agree with, I mean, obviously Force Awakens is similar in structure to New Hope. If I remember the video correctly, you gave a good explanation why you felt that they went down that road.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't remember that specific point, but that's definitely something, you know, people say a lot. And I think it is definitely similar to A New Hope. I think that was intentional. I feel like a lot of those elements are kind of universal elements. But I feel like for as many similarities as there were, it didn't really bother me, because I felt like there were a lot of new things that they were doing also. Like the introduction of the Finn character was a cool, you know, new take on what a Star Wars character is, like getting to know a stormtrooper. We spend a lot of time with Kylo Ren, and, you know, get to know him as a character far more than you do Darth Vader in the original. And yeah, so I feel like there was it did have kind of the same big beats, and I'm in agreement that like if there's another Death Star at any point, I'm just gonna like quit, because like they need to stop having Death Stars.
Or in Marvel or any superhero movie, the villain be a cloud in the sky that's destroying
the
everything.
Blue light beam.
Yes, the blue light beam in the sky. It's the Suicide Squad one. I'm like, you guys gotta be kidding me.
Right. I remember thinking that too. I was like, wait, really? Like, we've done that so many times now.
Like, come on. Lastly on the Star Wars front, Last Jedi. What thoughts, critiques, comments?
I'm not going to dive into it too much, because I may or may not be working on a new video that will go into that in more detail.
Good, awesome. That should do well.
Yeah, but yeah, hopefully I will probably end up angering one half of the internet, you know, one way or another, or both.
But that's your way with everything, isn't it? I mean, anything you put out, you're going to piss somebody off.
It's true. But yeah, my sort of overview with The Last Jedi, I think, is I really like the things that they went for and that they attempted to do. And I think I liked all of the Rey, Kylo Ren, Luke Force storyline stuff. I thought that was an interesting addition to the Star Wars universe that wasn't just like replaying the original trilogy over again. And I feel like the Finn, Rose, Poe storylines, while intellectually interesting, and again, I like what they were going for, it was not very fun to watch, and I feel like it was not executed in a way that made the things they were trying to accomplish resonate with me anyway. So I have sort of like a love-hate relationship with the film, where there are parts where I feel like has things that I think are really important to bring to the Star Wars saga, and in some ways I think does those things better than maybe any of the films. And then there are other parts that are like prequel level, like why?
Ooh, those are fighting words. Prequel levels. How dare you, sir? No, I'm joking.
See, just can't win with Star Wars.
No, it's true. But I think that movie will age well. I think in 5 or 10 years, I think it'll age better than I think the prequels have gotten worse with age. I mean, because I remember when I first saw Phantom Menace, I thought, oh my God, this was awesome when I first saw it, but also I was starving for a Star Wars movie, and Darth Maul was the greatest character the Star Wars had ever created at the time. But
a double-bladed lightsaber. What else do you want?
I mean, he's got horns. Come on. And I recently watched it with my 6-year-old daughter, and I just was in shock at how horribly bad it was. Like the story structure, the characters, the dialogue. I was just like, oh my God, did I like this? It's kind of like going back to the 80s and watching a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Like, because at the time it was like the greatest thing ever, but now not so much.
Right. Well, I think it'll also be interesting. I think episode 9 and what they choose to do with episode 9 will probably affect the perception of 8, because I feel like they can either kind of double down and keep going hard in that same direction, or they could try to walk it back and do another JJ Force Awakens kind of lighter, fun take on the ending.
I think JJ's,
and I feel like
JJ's there, so I think that might be where it goes.
Yeah, and that's kind of worried about that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And when are we ever going to get an Old Republic trilogy? I want an Old Republic trilogy, right?
That'd be cool. I mean, maybe that's what Rian Johnson's working on.
He said he's not. He said specifically he's not. But we'll see. We'll see.
Right.
So sorry guys, I had to go down. I had to geek out with Michael about this because I wanted to hear his thoughts. I'm sorry. So let me ask you. You've read a tremendous amount of screenwriting books, because I know you refer to many of them throughout your videos. What is your favorite screenwriting book? And which one would you, if you had to buy one if you're a screenwriter and you're going to buy one, which are they? Which is it?
That's actually a really hard question. I mean, I think.
Okay, three books.
Okay, so my answer is going to be The Anatomy of Story by John Truby, which is probably my most used book. But I think the reason I like that one so much is because I've read the others. And I think it kind of added a missing piece for me. And so I think Story by Robert McKee is sort of the counterpart to that in my head, of just like, these are the fundamentals there. And then recently I've been reading John York's book, Into the Woods, a 5-act journey into structure or into story. And it kind of covers a lot of the same things that sort of the older screenwriting books, like The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler, and like sort of all those things it talks about and then makes commentary on and sort of updates them in ways that I find interesting. So I think those are the 3 that have really resonated with me. And I feel like that's kind of my litmus test for screenwriting books, because I think in a lot of ways they're all talking about the same thing.
Sure.
And so I think it's about finding the 1 or 2 that click with you and make you go, oh, I get it. Like this resonates with me. I understand how to internalize this and actually apply it.
Now, how has Lessons from a Screenplay helped you as a screenwriter and as a filmmaker?
I mean, I think it's opened my eyes to all the things that I was doing wrong. I think I think the most valuable thing is it's made me appreciate those fundamentals. Sort of like how I was talking earlier, film school me just wanted to like be creative and like I don't want to follow the rules. I want to do something interesting and like not cookie cutter. And I think I've come to appreciate that story as we know it anyway, as our culture and our society is kind of based on a formula, and it's there for a reason. Like there is a psychological reason that we respond to things that are told in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so I think I've come to appreciate that and value the importance of that and structure and character arcs and all those fundamentals. And then that has also helped me appreciate even more stories that either, do their own twist on them and kind of turn our expectations on their head, or films that follow them to a T, but do it in a way that still feels really fresh and engaging. Like I'm as impressed by people that can do everything conventionally and have it still be, an exciting film experience as I am people that can break the rules and create that same kind of effect.
Very cool. Now, can you discuss a little bit about your Patreon and what is Patreon in general?
Sure. So Patreon, I kind of describe it as kind of like Kickstarter, because people know Kickstarter. It's sort of like an ongoing Kickstarter. So you can go on Patreon and pledge a certain amount to a creator that you follow on like an ongoing basis. So my Patreon, you could go on and pledge, $3 per video that I release. And so it's sort of a way to help, for you to help the creators you like make their creations sustainable. And so my Patreon, they're sort of like Kickstarter. They're different tiers with different perks. And so there's the $1 tier where you get to know ahead of time what film I'm working on for the next video. There's a $3 tier where I release like extra content where I sort of talk about, another thing I love about the film, and it's just sort of like a short video that I make just for patrons. There's a $5 tier where you get early access. You get to see the videos before they go live. And then a $10 tier, which is really fun, where you can join like a Google Hangout. Like we have a monthly Google Hangout where me and all the patrons like talk about movies that we've seen or like discuss the latest video. And that's actually, I was kind of nervous about putting that up because I wasn't sure what that experience would be like, but it's actually been really great getting to know some of my patrons really well and talking about our favorite films and just having really cool discussions. So,
awesome.
So those are the different rewards available on my Patreon.
Very cool. And like $2 doesn't sound a lot, but when you get 1,000 or 2,000 people, then all of a sudden.
Yeah. And what I love about it is that it really is freeing because my videos don't have to like live or die by how many views they get on YouTube. And so like that helps resist the urge to do like clickbaity titles or like try to dumb down my content to reach a wider audience. Patreon is really great at enabling creators to make the authentic content that they want to make.
That's why you haven't done a Marvel versus DC one.
Right.
Which,
like, do we need another one of those? I don't know.
I actually accidentally did one of those when I was doing a consulting session with a filmmaker, and he asked me, and I'm like, shit, all right, let's do this. And I laid in 15, 20 minutes, and then I popped it up on my YouTube channel just for fun. I swear to God, it got like 20,000 views.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, really? Really? There's so many other good things on this channel. This is the one.
Right. It is and it is frustrating because that's sort of how my Star Wars video is also that way. And it's kind of the one negative video that I've done where I'm kind of like criticizing the films.
Sure.
And it is kind of unfortunate that I think like criticism creates more, like stirs people up more. So they share it more and like debate about it more, and that helps the algorithm and stuff. And I try not to like feed into that side of the internet because I feel like there's too much of that. So I try to be constructive with my videos.
You are actually,
Patreon.
You are fairly. I think you're right. The Star Wars is the only one that you actually were kind of like downing of something that you were covering. Generally, you're uplifting and saying what they did right as opposed to what they did wrong.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. That's my goal with each one. Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. What advice would you give a screenwriter wanting to break into the business today?
Get really good. I think
You are a sage, sir. You are a sage.
I'm a genius, clearly.
You're a genius.
But I think that has, in my kind of somewhat limited experience, interacting with the industry, I think there is something to just being like undeniably good at what you do. And I think a lot of people trying to break into the film business, kind of jump several steps ahead of like, I need an agent and I need to do this and gotta like this one screenplay I have is going to sell and I'm going to make it and all this stuff. And I think it's much more helpful to practice a lot, write a lot, make a bunch of stuff so that you build up your skill set. So when you do have that opportunity, you're able to really capitalize on it, or in the meantime, make your own opportunities because you know how to create good stuff. So I think that's sort of in my experience, what's helped me is like, rather than getting like tunnel visioned on this one thing, put that thing aside, work on another thing, create another thing, put it out there, work with people. And I think the more you keep yourself going, that attracts other people that want to keep going. And eventually you build something that breaks through to the next level.
Very cool. Now, what is the book? Tell me the book that had the biggest impact on your life or career.
I think it is John Truby's The Anatomy of Story.
Yeah.
Because I think that was the screenwriting book that, like I said, it really like clicked for me, and all of the sort of Robert McKee like arcs and graphs and like that intellectual side of things. I think McKee explained it in a way that felt very organic and actionable and just really resonated with me, and kind of finally opened that door for me to enter and appreciate those sort of fundamentals of storytelling.
Now, what lesson took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
I think the creative self-discipline, I think, is hard, and I sort of have mentioned that before. But knowing the difference between you're just excited about an idea versus like, is that idea good? And like, I think in the past I've had ideas, like me 10 years ago, if I'd had the idea for lessons from the screenplay, I probably would have just written a video and made it and uploaded my first version and just sort of dove in and got into the fun part. And I think what I learned over my time in LA and working on all these other projects and stuff was that it's good to put in the work needed before you get to that fun part. Like, that discipline is the thing that will let you succeed and get to the part that you enjoy. And so I think that for lessons from the screenplay, like I said, was a lot of research and practice and doing lots of drafts and, not taking good enough as the final version and really pushing myself to do that extra work. And I think that is what's helped the channel become, as successful as I'm lucky enough that it has been, is that putting in that extra work that I may have skipped when I was younger.
Yeah, there is something to age, isn't there?
There is.
I mean, there's
frustrating, but it's true.
It's frustrating, and there are things that are not so good with age. But yes, I agree with you 110%. Now, this is probably the toughest question you'll be asked today. Name the 3 favorite films of all time.
Oh boy. Okay. Star Wars.
Obviously.
Oh, I hate this question. It's so hard.
It won't be on your tombstone, just 3 that tickle your fancy today.
Okay. Star Wars, Alien, and oh man, I got 7.
Oh God. Yeah, we can hang out. 7 is one of my favorite. 7 is one of my favorite films of all time. It's on my top 5 is that and Fight Club, because I just love 7. And funny. I'll tell you a real quick funny story. When I saw 7, I was in college. It was 95. I was in college, and when I walked out, there was a garbage can right by the exit of the theater, and I saw film in it. And I was like, "What the hell is that?" And I pull out the film, and it was the trailer to 7. And I literally just grabbed another bag, tossed it in the bag, and I just ran out the door with it. And it's still on my
amazing.
And it's still on my shelf today. I have a 35 millimeter print. I have never played, but I have a 35 millimeter. And you know how I cleaned it because it was like soda on it and other stuff on it. I put it in the tub. I cleaned it with soap and water. And it looks great. I hold it up and everything, and I still own the trailer set. One of my prized possessions.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's like a priceless piece of like memorabilia. That's awesome.
Now, where can people find you?
So they can find me on YouTube. The channel is Lessons from the Screenplay. And then on Twitter and Instagram, my handle's at Michael Tucker LA. Yeah, those are the places.
Michael, man, it has been a pleasure and an honor speaking to you, sir, man. Please continue doing the good work that you're doing and helping screenwriters and filmmakers out there with those awesome videos, man. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Michael. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming on the show and dropping some knowledge bombs on the tribe. And if you want to get links to anything we discussed in this episode, just head over to indiefilmhustle.com, or you can go to indiefilmhustle.com/BPS 022 for all the listeners over on the Bulletproof Screenplay Podcast. So I hope you guys enjoyed this crossover event. I do these every few months or so, maybe month and a half, 6 weeks or so. I try to grab an episode that I think will talk to both audiences, both for Indie Film Hustle Podcast and the Bulletproof Screenplay Podcast. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. And I have a bunch more stuff coming. I just can't wait to tell you. So much stuff, so many things happening. I can't. I'm about to burst, seriously. But guys, I really appreciate all the support. And if you haven't gone already, please head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave a good review for the show. And if you're listening to Bulletproof Screenplay, please head over to screenwritingpodcast.com and leave a good review for that show. We are brand new with Bulletproof Screenplay, so every review really helps us out a lot in the rankings. So thank you again so much for listening, guys. And as always, keep the hustle going, keep that dream alive, and keep on writing no matter what. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Bulletproof Screenplay Podcast at bulletproofscreenplay.com. That's BULLETPROOFSCRENPLAY.com.
Is Wingstop the best thing to ever happen to delivery, or is delivery the best thing to ever happen to Wingstop? It is a tasty mystery. But with 11 mouth-watering flavors delivered right to your door, you can't go wrong. It's game on with our zesty lemon pepper or the sweet slow burn of mango habanero, topped off with our hand-cut, perfectly seasoned fries. Order online at wingstop.com and find out how tangy and delicious delivery can be. Wingstop, where flavor gets its wings.
I can't believe it.
That Gerald is presenting the quarterly budget report with finger puppets?
Look, here comes a 1.7% decrease in fixed overhead. Hello, everybody.
No, I can't believe how easy it was to save hundreds of dollars on my car insurance with Geico.
Who are you? The projected increase in organic Q3 revenue. Hooray!
Believe it, Geico could save you 15% or more on car insurance.